All right, let's talk about one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, one of the absolute weirdest technologies that's shaping our world right now: deep learning. It's the engine behind some massive scientific revolutions and also, well, some truly bizarre advice.
And I mean, you can't make this stuff up. An official AI chatbot for New York City actually told businesses it was totally fine to serve cheese that a rodent had nibbled on. Seriously, that's the wild reality of the AI world we're living in.
So, how do we get from world-changing science to rat cheese recommendations? To even begin to understand that, we've got to look under the hood and figure out what deep learning actually is. And it's not just one weird glitch. Take this for example. A person managed to convince a car dealership's chatbot to make a quote-unquote legally binding offer to sell a brand new $50,000 SUV for a single dollar. And that really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? How can the very same technology be smart enough to reshape science, but also dumb enough to sell a car for $1? Well, the answer is all about how it works. So what is it? Basically, deep learning uses these things called artificial neural networks that have tons of layers stacked on top of each other. That's the deep part. You can kind of think of it like an assembly line for information. Each layer does its own little job, figures something out, and then passes a smarter, more refined piece of information to the next layer in line.
Let's make this real. Imagine an AI trying to recognize a face in a photo. The very first layer? It just sees a jumble of pixels. The next layer looks at that jumble and starts finding basic edges and shapes. Then, the layer after that puts those shapes together into things like an eye or a nose. And finally, the last layer takes all those pieces, assembles them, and goes, yep, that's a face. It's all about building up complexity, one simple layer at a time.
And when this whole layered approach works, wow, it is capable of so much more than just seeing faces. It can literally revolutionize science as we know it. So let's start with the incredible promise of this technology. Check this out. Google's Genome AI used deep learning to predict 2 million new stable materials. To put that into perspective, that's like compressing hundreds of years of human trial and error discovery into just a tiny fraction of the time. We're talking about things that could lead to way better batteries, new superconductors. The possibilities are just staggering.
And it's definitely not just materials. AI is already blowing past traditional methods for predicting the weather. It's helping us understand disease by creating these super accurate aging clocks just from a blood sample. And, it's also the engine behind the scenes powering everything from new drug discoveries to what show Netflix thinks you should binge watch next.
But, and this is a huge but, for every one of those incredible successes, you get these spectacular failures. This brings us to the other side of the coin, those moments when that layered, abstract logic just completely and totally falls apart.
This is a perfect example of how AI just doesn't get human context. Basketball fans were saying a player was shooting bricks, an old saying for missing a bunch of shots. Well, an AI-powered news service reported that he was literally vandalizing houses by throwing actual bricks. It understood the words, but it had zero clue about the meaning.
You see that same pattern matching without understanding problem right here. This is why Google's AI search feature famously told people to put glue on their pizza. It found that tip on some satirical website and presented it as a helpful fact because, hey, it looked like a recipe. The AI doesn't know what glue is or, that you probably shouldn't eat it.
And look, these aren't just a few funny, isolated glitches. Air Canada's bot just made up a fake refund policy that the airline was then legally forced to honor. A delivery company's bot was tricked into swearing at a customer, and this one's genuinely dangerous. A supermarket recipe bot generated instructions that would create deadly chlorine gas.
So these failures, from the absolutely hilarious to the truly dangerous, they start to raise some much, much deeper questions. Questions about the biases we accidentally bake into these systems and the ethical guardrails we so desperately need. And what's really interesting is that when researchers looked at 84 different sets of AI ethics guidelines from all over the world, they found that everyone pretty much agrees on the big stuff. The top principles are things like transparency, justice, doing no harm, responsibility, and privacy. The problem isn't knowing what the goal is. The hard part is actually coding it into a machine. Because right now, out in the real world, machine bias is a huge problem. Amazon had to scrap a recruiting AI because it taught itself that men were better candidates. AI systems used in our justice system have shown clear racial bias in parole decisions. And facial recognition, it's been proven time and again to be less accurate for people with darker skin. At the end of the day, the AI just learns whatever biases are already in the data we feed it.
And what makes all this even trickier is something called the black box problem. With a lot of these deep learning models, their reasoning is so complex, so layered, that even the engineers who built them can't fully explain why it made a specific decision. And, when an AI suggests a recipe for chlorine gas, not knowing why it did that is a massive, massive problem.
So, if we can't always trust the machine, and a lot of the time we can't even understand how it thinks, where does that leave us? What's the role of good old-fashioned human judgment in all of this? The answer might lie in something we all have: intuition. I mean, if you've used these tools, you know that feeling, right? The answer it gives you is amazing, but it's just almost right. That sense of almost, as this essay so perfectly puts it, is our human intuition kicking in. It's our built-in quality control for meaning, and it's something the machine just doesn't have. In fact, you could say we're all adapting already. We're developing this totally new skill. Some people are calling it prompt proprioception. It's like we're growing a new sixth sense for talking to AI, this internal feeling for how to guide it, how to correct it, and how to balance its cold, hard logic with our own human understanding.
Which really leaves us with this final thought. As raw AI power gets cheaper and more available, maybe our most valuable skill, our most human skill, is going to be our ability to listen to these amazing and flawed machines, to tell the truth from the nonsense, and to guide their incredible power with our own irreplaceable intuition. What do you think?